you'll die one day and not leave a mark here. Some of the most creative people are desperate people.
There's no way to describe it other than God must be involved.
My lack of belief in self was limiting other people. When you become more integrated, you become more creative.
Welcome back to another episode of the New Rules Podcast. It's your girl, Breezy, and I am here with Mr. Adrian Crawford. We are going to jump right in it today. This is going to be a shorter episode.
That is very funny. You went right for the, there's no warm-up now. There's no pre-workout, no warm-up. We're just getting right to it.
Yeah.
Let's get to it. All right, let's do it. Let's go.
Do you want me to start over? Or were you saying that as a part of the
I
episode?
was joking. I was just... See, I try to have banner with you, and then you don't
know
if I'm serious or not.
Well, that's happened to me too. Sometimes it starts out.
Oh my gosh! All right,
we got a lot to accomplish here at New Rules, so this episode's going to be a little bit shorter, but it's going to be full of a lot of wisdom.
I hope so. Here we go. Let's do it. What are we talking about today, Bri?
Belief. That's what we're going to talk about today.
Belief?
No, I'm just kidding. I said I hope so. No, today we're going to talk about creativity and leadership.
Mm-hmm.
So I think to start us off, can you share a little bit of your perspective of what creativity is? I feel like you have a pretty unique perspective of it.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share a little bit of what you believe it is and how that has evolved over time?
Yeah, I think that creativity, really when it's all said and done, I think it's the ability to solve problems. And I think that you're willing to not just do it like a certain way. You're just more about the end result. You're about accomplishing whatever goal that is, solving whatever problem it has to be. And so I think that that's where creativity really stems from. I think creativity at times, though there are those who are very abstract in their creativity, right? You think about a Kanye West, you think about a Pharrell. Like those guys are very abstract with what they do. And that is creative. But I also think there are people who are making, they're making machinery, or there are people who fix how that we deal with crops now and some of the machines that are made there. Those people who created those things, those are those who are innovative as well. I think so many times that we just think creativity are just for those people kind of in bigger cities, or people who just kind of like to float or whatever people's thoughts are of what creative is. But I think creativity is about people who are willing to really solve problems.
Have you always thought that?
I haven't, but I would say I feel like it's been for a long time now. I think when I was younger, I used to think, I didn't even think I was creative. I always thought creatives, again, were like artists. There were people who were just like, man, they would just come up with them. I'm like, how do you even think about that? But I always look back on it, but I always
like people who make art, like people who paint, people who make music.
And then,
so even in terms of ideas, you thought there were still specific avenues that were only considered creative.
Yeah, I think like a fashion designer. Oh, okay, that's creative, because that's kind of how the narrative has been. Those are those people who say they're the creatives, but I didn't think of a basketball coach like as a creative, right? But when you actually watch a basketball, like a coach and things he has to do to figure out solve problems, and all of a sudden position players in a different place they've never done, never been before. That's creativity of actually solving a problem, so on and so forth. But I think I used to always have an imagination. I would think about different things. I always would have I used to play Dungeons and Dragons, right? And I used to always do that. Why? Because I could use my imagination about things, but I never thought that it actually was that. But what I look at now is, as I've gotten older, that creativity I just look and I think I study all different types of people who've made really cool stuff. And they're just were creative. Steve Jobs, people consider Steve Jobs, man, this creative genius. Steve Jobs is really about solving problems. He cared about beauty. He cared about, how can he, take a PC and get more into the hands of people. He cared more about, he cared about design, how things looked. And so like a guy like him though, but he wasn't just this natural, like creative, but he was about solving a real problem.
Like he's an engineer. Yeah,
he was. He's an engineer. He has his background, and he just went out there, and solved problems. You think about Sam Altman right now with ChatGPT. Sam Altman's AI. I'm not gonna look at Sam Altman like, oh man, that's a creative genius, but he's creating something freaking that's been revolutionary with ChatGPT. So I think again, it goes back. I'm keep saying those who solve problems.
It was funny how you said he's creating something that's freaking revolutionary. You believe that every human being is creative?
I do at some level. I think there's moms that are very creative, like mothers who have to figure out how to, I mean, I think it's an act of like creative genius to get like your child to like, learn how to, whether if it is to, learn to put their own pajamas on, right? Or learn how to like brush their teeth, learn how to, use the potty, learn whatever. Like you have to be really creative as like a parent. As a father, I mean, I think people have the ability to be creative, but I think people don't think they're creative because they, like I said, they just have this, we all have this thought in our brain of what a creative is, and we don't think that we're that.
If we all believe that we were, what do you think would look different in society?
I think if we were this way, I think there would be a lot less complaining and a lot more problems being solved. I think that when you don't think you have the creative agency in you to solve problems, then what you do is just complain about problems. So I think we'd actually have a lot more people solving problems. I think humanity would be moving forward faster if people were more about solving problems instead of just always complaining.
How do you think that, because it seems like complaining plays even like a bigger role in your own creative capacity too. How does complaining typically hinder somebody's belief that they can actually change something?
Because what you end up doing, it's not a desperation. See, I think that some of the most creative people are desperate people. They're people who, they figure out how to get something done that they really care about. And I think when you just complain, or I don't have the resources, or the cards are stacked against me, or I don't have this type of power access, what you do is you just keep looking instead of saying, no, I have to solve this problem. Because I guarantee if I told everyone, hey, if you got to get to Jacksonville, Florida, and in Jacksonville, Florida, you got to get there in 3 hours, right? And let's say you don't have a car, you got to get there in 3 hours or 4 hours, whatever the time is. If not, your closest family member is going to pass away. I guarantee you, people would find a way. They would find whatever creative. I mean, they would literally probably find a way to get a helicopter. I mean, they would do anything because why? You're desperate. So I think that's the part, is because I think people are not desperate at times to solve problems. I think it's just easier just to look at them.
Why do you feel like people aren't desperate?
Because I think that I think a lot of times we just let life happen to us. I think we just have been so used to just things being delivered to us. We're becoming more and more of a culture and society that has we get things of ease more and more. And also, I think another thing, I don't think people understand like the why. We talk a lot about that, their why, like the actual. I don't think they can see how who they are, who they're hardwired to be. Most people don't even know what that is. And even those who do know what that is, they've been taught it's like getting a job. Instead of realizing, no, like, man, who you are can go and, jobs are just containers or assignments or whatever. You can go in a lot of different worlds. So I think people don't realize that they actually have the ability to actually solve those problems.
How do you think that having a sense of urgency can impact your ability to creatively solve problems, both for better and for worse?
I think for better is that when you have urgency, you get to first principles. You have to cut a lot of stuff out. We live in an information age where you could just you can research, get all the information, watch all the video. I mean, do a bunch of stuff and stay in that world for like days. When you have a deadline or something has to happen, it makes you cut all the noise out and get right to it. I think the other thing about urgency sometimes is that the urgency to create something, I think sometimes when people have urgency to create, it's about them creating things. Sometimes I don't think not to solve the problem, but to be like novel, or just to ride a wave or a trend, or try to become, try to go viral or something like that. I think when people are like, I keep putting content out, I got to keep putting content out, got to keep putting content out. And I'm all about putting content out. I think those things are in certain places. I think those things are very, a lot of great people make great businesses and have done a lot of work putting content out. And I think they should do that. But on the other side of it, I think it's because it's how they're wired. I think it's who they are. They do a good job with it. But I think a lot of times people just do stuff just to do it, to go viral, or just to make something versus solve a problem.
How has your ability to create evolved over time?
I think it's really evolved over time, just thinking bigger. I mean, me and you had this conversation, the other day where you had said to me, you're like, man, I think one of the best things is that when you have the room to like just create things, if we don't do it, what it builds in you. I think for me, my creativity has evolved over time of solving more complex problems and larger problems. So not just, hey, I'm just trying to figure out, like, I used to learn creativity when I was doing basketball training. Man, I've got to get this player who can't do this thing, this skill that I naturally just knew how to do. I had to get creative in teaching them how to do that, or keeping players engaged during workouts or stuff like that. That was on a very individual. Now I'm thinking about, how do we, with this company with 150 employees, or this industry that's going like this, how do we help solve a problem that's there? So now the problems they impact more. So that's where my creativity has evolved, because I've had to think larger about it.
What would you say to somebody who spends more time complaining about external circumstances?
That you'll die one day and not leave a mark here. That you will literally waste your life. And I say that I think every life is valuable, but not every life is productive. I think every life is valuable. Every human being is valuable, but not every human being is productive. And I believe that is one of the saddest things, is to stand at the end of your life and feel like you did not bring production. You spent more time complaining, more time in the comments, more time gossiping with your friends about problems versus actually solving them. I just think that's such a wasted life.
So I also think there are people who spend time complaining, but it looks a little bit different. It's more internal. It's like complaining about themselves, or maybe a lack of belief in self. And I think you don't really find yourself spending a lot of time complaining about external circumstances.
Yeah.
I think you do find yourself often consumed with like a lack of belief of what maybe you're capable of. So what would you say to that person?
Yeah, I think that, man, having a good understanding of self and then belief in self is really important. I think that's what's really motivated me. I think, especially over the last year, I started realizing this, is that my lack of belief in self was limiting other people from me helping other people. Because I realized that, man, I have the ability to create some things, and it was limiting other people from being able to walk in what they did. And so what I had to restructure, you have to restructure of like, no, you need to understand who you are, and you need to really buy in and believe in the talent that you have. Because when you do that, it's not about you. It has everything to do with you, nothing to do with you, because when you start to believe that, other people begin to get impacted by it. That's the difference. I think when people have such the negative internal dialogue, which I fully get, what you're doing is you're hindering other people from experiencing things that your actual skill set, your ability, your creativity can actually add to the world. And so it's really important for us to have the right dialogue. And again, we talk a lot about that here, of like, it's a healthy sense of self. This isn't this new age thing of where just, man, if you believe, you believe it, you can achieve it. No, you can't. You know what I'm saying? It's like, no, having a real understanding of who you are, a real understanding of like motives, intentions, having a real understanding of what skills you bring. But once you know that, man, you should run and go after that. Let me ask you a question. So as someone who you are like, there's a lot of creative things, I know you love fashion, you love art, things like that. How have you used creativity in your current job? Because you do a lot of operation stuff. You do a lot of operations, but you have freedom to do different things within our company. But how have you been able to unleash your creativity? Or maybe you feel like you haven't been able to fully do it.
That kind of ties into the next question that I was going to ask you, which I'll wait to ask so that I don't answer your question with a question. I think that I have a beautiful luxury of being expected to make things that are one of one. So whether it comes down to even the operational stuff, from our job descriptions, our pricing models, it's like, and even, yesterday you gave me a project, and my starting point, and first off, rarely ever do you give me like complete this project kind of thing.
Yep.
But even whenever you do, my starting point, which I think is both my personality and also some of the culture we expect here, is whatever terms are listed on this, I might consider them. But my starting point is basically like removing any form of like guardrail.
Yep.
And creating from a starting point of no limitations.
Yeah.
And then adding the limitations as we start to build or start to execute. And so I think that I've just had the luxury of being able to exist in an environment that really does both expect that and give room for that.
Mhm.
And it works out great for me because that's just where I naturally find myself preferring to be.
Yeah.
Some people find that incredibly frustrating. It's like,
Yeah.
I want you to give me more information. I want to know more of what do you expect? What do you want me to make?
Yep.
But I do not like that at all. It's one of the reasons why we work well together. And then I'll also say is that here we try to manage the tension between not like creating worlds or roles just for one person.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, if someone is really committed to the mission and has been a part for a long time,
Yep.
we are going to consider like who they are and their skill set and what they bring to the table for where we're going.
Yeah.
And so I feel such a fluidity, and no matter what role I have, there's so many different things that I enjoy that is going to also be considered, whether it is from being able to make merch or being able to like creatively design how a theme plays out in an event. So even there's not one thing that really takes up 100% of my time.
Yeah.
It's maybe 10 different things that I get to kind of dabble in here or there, which is really nice, especially in youth. Like one of the things that we see in Gen Z is people jumping to different roles and jobs and different things. So they're trying to figure out what they really like. And I've had the ability to be in one space and still get to try all of those different things.
Yeah.
And to be fair, that getting to try it doesn't come without an expectation for it to be excellent.
Yep.
It's like I also don't get to just go out, and do it and not feel the pressure of and it's got to be good because you're doing it. You're not just doing it on behalf of yourself. You're doing it on behalf of like a mission, an organization, a community. And so there is a standard, but I more so view that expectation as it helps refine you, I think, more than anything. And so, I think I'm really grateful for that.
Let me ask you this as a follow-up. What do you think is, because to go into that and to be creative and to jump out and, a lot of people do want like, oh, okay, tell me what to do. Here's my structure, whatever. And when we first started doing this stuff and working together, it was like, it was a blank slate. We were building as we go. What made you commit? What made you feel like you wanted to be committed to that?
The mission.
Yeah.
I think that there's a part of it that like call plays a part. Because we are people of faith. I think when you're young, you don't always know how to explain it, or you don't always know what that feels like. And so sometimes it takes trial and error. You think that you need to be committed to something that you don't need to be. I think it takes a lot of practice. But I think call does play a huge part of it, where I just felt an internal responsibility that there's no way to describe it other than God must be involved. I think outside of that, though, personally, I just didn't have much to lose. I mean, in terms of like access and opportunity, you see how those things increase as I've become a more integrated person.
Yeah.
I would have never became a more integrated person had I not been a part of this community.
Mm-hmm.
And so in terms of there weren't many other options or weren't many other opportunities that I could be maybe pulled towards or negotiate between.
Yep.
And so I think really for me, it was easy to commit early on. I think as I've started to grow, the game is, are you still like committed?
Yeah.
And that's the part that I think that I'll focus on in the answer is really, and some of it, I'm just so mission oriented.
Yeah.
Like you can capture me with like any, not any vision. I have standards. I was like, but I like a mission, something that that will last before my lifetime is one of the big, like I just couldn't work in any corporate environment. I couldn't just work anywhere.
Yep.
There would have to be like a very serious long-term vision that I see myself helping create and like build momentum towards. And so I think that that's rare. I think we hear stories about it. Most organizations and places don't actually have that kind of long-term vision. And so that does limit, I think, a lot of the choices too. But I think in terms of the resilience is regardless of whatever my role looks like here, I am still responsible to develop myself as a whole person.
Yep.
No matter how much time I need to be here based off what I've committed to, no matter all the different things I'm thinking about. And then again, I am, like I said, like I'm lucky that I get to develop different things here.
Yep.
But either way, I'm responsible for that.
Yep.
And so I think carrying that as your own responsibility, like nobody else is at fault for me not growing in the things that I believe that I'm supposed to grow in, or putting time towards the things that I'm supposed to put time towards. Because at the end of the day, it was my decision. It wasn't yours. Maybe you offered it, but either way, I said yes, whether it was with my actions or vocally, which we've had both in this situation. But I think that that has helped a lot too. Just as I've evolved as a human, like, you know, that there are things that I do throughout the week or certain times where it's like randomly I'm learning about this random thing, or I'm going to the horse stables, or I'm exploring different things. And that's because it's not on you if I don't practice discovering the different things that I'm supposed to do and finding ways to make it work, even if I believe that I'm supposed to be committed to this mission.
No, that's good. And I think the thing that you said that's really important is that I want people to hear is that when you become more integrated, you become more creative. Because I think so many times our creativity gets locked behind fear, shame, our lack of belief. It gets hidden behind sometimes, like, even like our environment we grew up in, right? Like, if you didn't grow up in an environment where, like, you know, we talk about like desperation or resilience or whatever to get there. If you didn't grow up in an environment that did that, then it's going to be hard to pull out those things creatively. But I think as you become more integrated, more of that actually does come out. And I think that's when you start to see real beauty actually in the world. And so I think that that's really important, is that people do that. If you want to, you talk about being a creator, I think leaders have to be creative. I think because there are real, in an ever-changing world right now, there are real complex problems to solve. They're not the status quo of how you go about things are not the same anymore. You just cannot go about creativity the way that you've gone about it, you know, because or leadership the way you've gone about it, or solving a problem, because there's just new technology, there's new ways that we respond, there's new ways we do life. And so you've got to be able to think about that in markets that are changing, financial things that are changing. And so again, I think being integrated as a person actually does that, because I think sometimes people don't create because of like their own fears, and with their own fears, they've never been able to get past that fear. And so because they can't get past that fear, they won't put something out there. You know what I mean? They'll just they'll just go with people just telling them what to do, blah, 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 whatever. And I think at the end of the day, becoming integrated actually helps that creativity go to a new level.
Yeah, well, I think too, something we say all the time is anxiety drives black and white thinking.
Yeah.
So the more anxious of a person you are, and like when we say that, we're not talking about anxiety disorder. We're talking about anxiety as an emotion that everybody flows in and out of on a regular basis, whether you're aware of it or not. The higher you are on the scale of anxiousness, the less able you are to creatively think. And that's one of the reasons why we see in very high pressure situations, people apply very, what is the word? Complex. They apply very thin solutions to thick problems. And we see that at a broader scale, and most of us probably do that on a daily basis. We're just more judgmental of it on a broader scale. But largely that's one of the reasons why we talk so much about internal frameworks, because it strongly impacts the way that you create, not just your awareness and learning what's true, but also your resilience to push through anyways. Like on days where we have a lot of, let's say, interpersonal stuff or culture things, like it is harder for us to come up with solutions that are actually good. And you can feel it in the moment where you're like, God, like maybe this isn't the time to do it. And the hope, there's wisdom, and maybe we shouldn't brainstorm that right now. But there's another side of it though that's like, well, what do we need to learn how to grow in internally so that we can still be present and creatively solve problems even whenever hard things are happening?
Because and I'm really glad you brought that up about anxiety drives black and white thinking, because most of the times what we do, we create these thin solutions, because the thin solutions, what they ended up doing, they alleviate. So instead of like really solving a problem, we just want to alleviate the anxiety. So let's just say if you're a company and you're like, man, we have a client we lost, or we, a big part of our business. What can happen is that a thin solution, a creative thing, okay, what can we do right now to go make up for all this, right? And even if it takes us off to a whole different world and path, but we saw this company over here do it, so we're going to do exactly what they did, even though it's not about our mission, our values, whatever. It's just to alleviate the anxiety. So, okay, we got money in the bank, we got money coming in, we're good. So let's keep going. Versus like, okay, those are the moments where actually I think these are the moments, and those are the moments when you really test people's creativity, their creative agency. Are they willing to fight to hold that anxiety? Because they should. If you're running and leading something, you're leading a division or whatever it may be, like, and financially, things are, and like, are tight, or you don't know what's going to happen next, like that does create anxiety around it. So that's a real feeling. But are you willing, because now your values are tested, your mission's tested. I tell people, when those pressure in a business standpoint, even your personal life, when your finances are tested, it speaks to what you really value. It speaks if your values are real or not. Because all of a sudden it's like, man, are you just willing to compromise whatever? There's things I thought I used to value that I realized, oh no, I don't value those things. I value these things a little bit different. And so I really do think that's really important.
Yeah. And I think a good example is, hopefully it's okay if I talk about this, but our goal is to create a $50 million organization, like in terms of everything that's a part of it. And to be honest, we're not really financially motivated. It's more, we've put numbers to things because we feel like that's what we're supposed to do right now, even though that is definitely a challenge for us. We're a lot more driven by what feels right, what's the impact that's being made, the whole thing, which is very important. But to think that we want to get there and that we won't experience even years of time where we're in debt or in the red, it's just not like logical thinking based off how things grow to that point. But it's really easy in that whether it turns into 50 million or not when you're in the negative is really dependent upon your ability to make sound decisions and creative decisions whenever you feel the stress of like, how are we going to get payroll this month?
And I think that and bring that up, it's made me think, I think at times, you talk about what if I think different. I think at times survival has been the thing that has, I think, led to my creativity, and some of that's good, but it's been daily survival or monthly survival, not like, legacy or long-term survival, long-term building, meaning that like, I can, me and you had this conversation, you talk about, man, me giving you this project, because naturally with this transition that we're making within our company, the thing is, I was like, okay, here we go. I'm all in, man. Because I can just go and create. And I realized, I'm like, no. This is an opportunity for our team to really, this is how we level up. Because I'm in a thing, one of the most creative things I can do right now is not to be someone who does addition, but multiplication. Multiplication, I think, in a business happens when you are now, other people on your team are creating momentum and wake, not just the energy that you push. Because now all of a sudden, as I'm helping you, you're using your skill set there, and Cody's using his, and we got everybody else on our team doing their stuff. It starts to create this, but it still keeps anxiety, because you know what? There's still this trust that this is a new level you're going to, new level I'm going to, everybody's going to. Like, can we do it? We don't know. We haven't done it yet. But I do believe it's the best way to do it. I think creativity of like, I look at our organization, somebody said this to me recently. They were like, man, they're blown away by what we've built. With the majority of people who work here are under 30. And they were like, man, I am blown away by the environments you curate, the things you've done with people under the age of 30. And that takes a lot of work. We could have built something way faster and bigger with people who just have more experience. But for me, development of the next generation matters a ton to me. And so now it's like, okay, but how do we actually start to do this and then level everyone up? It's me saying, okay, Bri's no longer the 19-year-old who started off as our nanny. Like, no. We have a $1 million plus company that she really is running the operations for. He has to be that. We have our investment part of what we do that you and I are partners. Okay, I treat you as a partner, not as, that's Bri who was our nanny. No, she's a partner. So her voice, it's like all those things have to change and all those things have to grow. And I think for a company to do that, but that takes creativity. And you have to think about it different. Versus like, I can't just go read every playbook that's out there about this. I have to be able to say what uniquely fits us. Hey, what's up, guys? I hope today was good for you. I hope today was helpful with this simple thing that all of us are creatives. We all have the creative ability within us, but creativity is about solving problems. It's becoming desperate. It's having resilience to be able to figure out what is it that you're trying to solve and do whatever it takes to actually solve that. And so what I want to challenge you with this week is this simple point. What's a problem that's in front of you? And how can you solve it? That you're willing to say, this week, I'm going to try to solve this problem. And you're going to try to look at every different angle to ultimately get to the end goal, the end result. Until next time, keep writing new rules.